You've done everything right, but somewhere along the way, you've stopped feeling like yourself. In today's episode, I'm joined by Laura Best, speaker, coach, who's helped thousands of women realign their lives with who they are now, not who they used to be. We talk about how to evolve without losing yourself, how to reconnect with what actually lights you up as you achieve your goals, and the small questions that can lead to big clarity, especially when life looks successful but doesn't feel true to you anymore. You cannot miss today's episode. Welcome to the InvestHER Podcast. I'm Liz Fairclough.
And I am your co-host, Andressa Gadelli.
Okay, Laura, so you work with so many high-achieving women, and they look successful, but they feel like something's still missing, right? Can you share a moment from your own life where that disconnect became impossible to ignore?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is this is a big one, right, Liz? Because so many of us on the outside, everything's looking great. And, you know, social media is a huge part of that. I think we'd be lying if we were saying that we weren't trying to project some sort of image into the world. And to a certain extent, we have to do that, right? We have to be successful business owners, entrepreneurs, humans. There's an element of showing up in a certain way. But I know certainly for me, I mean, before I started Passion Collective, I was a consultant. I'd spent a lot of my time in the agency business, both in the UK and in the USA. Started out in PR, then went into advertising, then went into digital technology. So super high charging careers, right? I'd spent time in corporate. I'd worked at American Express, done all these like huge things, like big moments, you know, when you look back on your career and you're like, wow, I actually did that when I was 28 and I did that when I was 33. I'm sure many of your listeners have those moments. But it was back in 2014 and I was a new mum. I had my daughter a couple of years before, and God bless the US, maternity leave situation, got pretty much straight back to work. I had some maternity leave, but like many of your listeners, probably didn't have the chance to really enjoy and spend time with my daughter. So back to work, grinding it out with a lot of travel. I was leading 2 teams at the time. I was an only woman often in many of the scenarios at work. And this again was digital marketing and digital technology. And I actually loved working with the guys. Like I've got a brother, like I've always worked with guys. There's nothing wrong with that. But there was this moment for me when I realized, hold on a minute. Like, how did I get here? How did I get here? I was exhausted. I was being asked to do even more. I remember having a conversation with my boss who I was supposed to be 40 hours a week billable. And I was also running a team, 2 teams actually. And I was also being asked to develop new services. So I remember saying to him in this very English way, yeah, but Will, when am I supposed to go to the toilet? And it was me using my British sense of humor. I don't think he quite understood, but I'm like, when in the week are we supposed to even take care of basic, human functions? So I was operating at that level where on the outside, I had the clothes, the car, I was doing all the travel. I had these high profile clients, blah, 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 blah. And I felt grateful for all of that. I loved being a mum, but I felt incredibly torn between those worlds. But the biggest thing for me was this creeping realization that I had lost touch with the things that I loved in my work and my life, even though I was successful and I was checking these boxes, successful in the traditional way. So it wasn't necessarily this lightning bolt that came down on a certain day at a certain time saying you cannot ignore this. But certainly over a couple of months, easily a couple of months, and if I'm being honest with myself, years of pushing that back and just persisting and just, I got to keep going. I got to be successful. I got to keep doing what I'm doing. The moment for me really was when I was on a business trip in Dallas and I was being asked to do more. And I just didn't know how that was even possible. And that realization that I didn't know what I enjoyed anymore. I didn't know what I loved beyond my family. If you'd asked me, Liz, back in 2014, so Laura, what are you passionate about? I either would have given you like a death stare or it would have been completely blank. Like I had nothing inside, but on the outside, if you'd seen me, I was light and soul of the room, leading client meetings and all that jazz. So for me, the moment was really not, oh, here's my master plan for living a passionate life. The moment was, shit, how did I get here? And what do I love? And how on earth do I figure out a way to figure that out? And it wasn't necessarily a feeling of being stuck, although there was some stuckness there, which I'm sure many of your listeners, relate to. It was more this beginning of an awakening, I think, and a very uncomfortable feeling that, wait, I've spent 20 plus years building this thing, this path, but something is telling me I have to make my own path, but I don't know what that is. How do I figure this out? So that's really the moment that was impossible to ignore. And that's what led me to literally start Passion Collective out of something from my heart that told me it's something about passion. And I know I've got to bring people together.
Wow. That's a journey, right? And there was multiple moments I heard in your story that caused you to stop, pause, reflect. So my question, obviously this created an organization, a movement for you, but staying true to yourself, not everyone that's feeling a little uncertain of themselves as they're achieving big goals want to necessarily start a whole movement for it like you have. But I'm curious for the women listening that have had those moments, they're hearing it, they're feeling it. They don't feel stuck because they're achieving goals, right? They're making things happen, right? These aren't women like confused necessarily. But there's still this essence of, am I losing myself in this journey? And it sounds like you had those moments. So what were the first things you did for yourself or have you've done for other women that take the reflection and the awareness into action?
Yeah, it's a really good question because I think we get a lot of bad advice on this, honestly. And I don't mean to sort of be critical or be super judgy, but I guess I am.
I think be judgy.
Sometimes we're told, well, Liz, just to be yourself, you need to get back to your values. What are your values? And I think when there's nothing wrong with values, and obviously we want values, but that's the first thing. When you're in this situation where you're like, who am I? What am I doing with my life? Oh my God, has the last 20 years been a complete waste of time? If you try and sit down and be like, right, what are my values? I think that's incredibly difficult. It was at least difficult for me. I tried it. And I think one of the problems with that exercise and the way that it's teed up for some is that you end up with these generic words. It's sort of like the company mission statements that you see that's like integrity and hard charging. They're all the same words that everybody uses, right? So for me, being true to yourself, there are values that are part of that, but it's not where we necessarily start. My take on it is that I think we have to get back to what truly lights us up. Us. And I think that's one of the problems, and certainly the situation that I was in 2014, I had lost sight of the things that lit me up inside, whether that was the work stuff, the leisure stuff. And at the time, I was a extremely busy professional with a 3-year-old, living on my own in America, 4,000 miles away from home with virtually no support system. So yeah, I didn't have, in my mind, I thought I didn't have the ability all the time to, do the things that I wanted to do. But really, if I was being honest to myself, I was trying to shape myself into a box or a situation that wowould create a certain level of success that I thought I wanted. And frankly, some of it I would still love to have. I'd love to have some of the financial stuff that I had, 11 years ago. So some of it we want and we need, right? But for me, the biggest moment for me, it was actually a rainy weekend here in Minneapolis. We don't get rain very often. Mostly it's snow in the winter, but it was raining and it was lovely. And I just took the weekend and I journaled about the activities and the things that I used to do that I loved. And I also thought about the things in my life that were not lighting me up. The health stuff that I was doing or not doing that was not lighting me up, the social stuff that was not lighting me up. And I kind of went through all the mucky stuff of like, oh my God, I'm doing all this stuff that is not fun and enjoyable, and it's not fulfilling to me, and just getting all that out of my system, because I think sometimes, especially as women, we're really good at just putting up with it and just doing it, right? So I got a lot of this out. And that's when I realized, honestly, there were two things that I used to love doing that, gave me a sense of purpose and fulfillment. And yet also I just really, really enjoyed. And one of those was writing. And as a corporate leader, all I wrote back in those days was PowerPoint decks. I got really, really good at doing bullet points and writing decks. And that's not writing. I missed the flow and the storytelling aspect of writing. And I also missed the energy of gathering people together. And it wasn't necessarily being like a party queen, because that's not me if you know me at all. It's just the energy of pulling people together. So those two things became Passion Collective in the early days. And I think what was important about that moment for me is realizing not only do I love those things, but I also don't do them anymore. And also I'm quite good at them. I'm not the world's best at either of those, but hold on. I actually have strengths in those areas. And people have told me in the past, yeah, you can write, or wow, that was a really good party, Laura. And so for me, it was this moment of realizing I used to love these things. Maybe I've got some talent with them. Maybe I can use them in a way to create some positive energy somewhere. And maybe they are important, because this career that I had, we weren't talking about parties or writing stories. They seemed silly, right? Silly. We were doing big, serious, multi-million-dollar technology projects. But it was acknowledging that these things that I loved or used to love were just as important in my life as the work stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
So that's really where it started.
I think the key, though, for those listening is, versus, what are my values? What are my passions? And I know I've talked to you about this, Laura, is that those are big questions. Those are loaded questions, especially if you have like a few minutes, like, what's my passion? It's a lot. It's a lot of unraveling and dissecting, if you will. So what do a lot of people do, and a lot of women especially do, just going to go get things done. I know how to achieve goals, and I know how to get them. I know how to get things done. So it's about stopping and number one, being aware that something is a little off or something doesn't feel aligned. And we always use that word a lot, is alignment, right? So I'm curious, what lights me up? Could women I'm almost thinking of an action that could be taken is almost like looking at your life right now, looking at your last week of your schedule, personally, professionally, plus put a plus by things that light you up, or things that really are draining you. Is that something that you've seen people do to kind of just audit what's in their world right now?
Kind of, you can. I don't think that's a bad idea. Typically what I've seen with our passionados, as we call ourselves, people who are passion seekers, is if they're at the stage where they're saying to themselves, I have no idea what my passion is. And I kind of feel like I've been stuck for the last couple of years / months.
Sure.
If you ask them to do that, the shoulders just go down, right?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing. They don't have anything. That's the whole point. That's the whole reason that they're trying to figure this out. I think one of the issues is actually, Liz, something that you said just before that question, is that we have been told that identifying your passion is a really big thing, that passions have to be this like monumental, life-changing, multimillionaire entrepreneurial story, because frankly, that's what a lot of these social media influencers are telling us, right? My belief is that truly no one can tell you what your passions are. No one. And I'm sure you've had people, Liz, say to you, oh, Liz, like you should really do this thing because you're really good at it. Oh, Liz, you guys should really do this. So sometimes we end up doing these things that we think.
Because you're told to, right? You recommended. Yeah. Absolutely.
Or that other people say they're important, or that other people say it's going to be creative or it's going to matter. We don't spend enough time being really honest with ourselves about, but what do I really love? Like, even if I'm a real estate agent and there are things that I've got to do, I know how much paperwork and red tape is involved in real estate, right? Even if I don't love that part of, my work every day, what is it about this role and this situation that I'm in, that I truly, truly love, right? So I actually advise and coach people not necessarily to look at their week yet, because that is a point where they can do that. But the first thing you've got to do is define for yourself what passion feels like to you. That's the problem, is that we're all saying, oh my God, I've got to have a passion. I've got to be passionate. I've got to be purpose driven. You know, Simon Sinek has this start with why exercise, which I think is helpful. But between you and me, I got stuck on it because it was so big. I'm like, oh my God, my purpose,
it's very overwhelming.
My one why, like I couldn't do it. I was like, I don't know. I've got like 15 of them. How do I get that into one sentence? The beautiful thing about passion is that you can be multi-passionate. You can be passionate about a bazillion things. You know, it doesn't have to be one thing that you're locking onto. So what I advise people to do, if they're in this spot where they're like, well, I don't know, Liz, I got nothing, is think back to a time when you were doing something that truly lit you up. And I'm using the words light you up because it's an easy way to talk about it. You may not use those words for yourself, but how did that feel to you? Was it calm, peaceful? Was it fiery? Did you feel like a badass? Was it beautiful? You know, I truly believe that if we first define what that feeling feels like to us, and by the way, my feeling is fizzy. That's my word, fizzy, F-I-Z-Z-Y. Because when I'm doing something I love, I have this fizzy energy inside of me that is telling me that this is something that is lighting me up. And over the years, I've been able to sort of dissect that and figure out what those components are. But if I keep that fizzy feeling there with me, it'll help guide decisions about the activities that I try or the stuff that I no longer do. So that's the problem, Liz, is that we're thinking that pursuing our passions has to be this giant thing. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. And second of all, we don't know what feeling we're chasing. We're just trying to get passion, or we're just trying to be passionate, you know, and it's different for every single person.
I love that idea of that exercise, because I think the other thing that a lot of people do is they look at what they should be doing. So it's more you get into the doing part or the action part, which is important. But to your point, right, the feeling can come from a variety of places, right? And so the feeling is actually the ultimate result or the ultimate goal, which we don't always realize. We always think, okay, what should I do so I can not feel so, you know, disconnected, or I don't feel true to myself. But then we're like, okay, what can I do to feel more true to myself, versus saying, what are the feelings that I need to reconnect with so that I can get into the doing part? I really like that idea. Something that Andres and I did, interestingly enough, 8 years ago when we launched the podcast, was we both said, because we could, you know, in life, you could start in a lot of different ways, right? If you want to do something. And so we said, okay, we could start a podcast. We can start an event. There was like 7 things we brainstormed. And we said, whatever we start with, we really, really want to feel very purposeful and passionate about. So we did what you're saying. And we analyzed sort of like the top moments in our lives. And with podcasting, the interesting thing was we both realized about ourselves. We did this separately, and then we came together. Because that's really another part of this, is if you have partners or a team, it's really helpful to do these kinds of things separately and then come together, right? So we both did this, and then we came together and we're sharing our answers. And what we both realized is that we both love inspiring other people, and we love also being inspired. And so if you think about it, what is a podcast? You're interviewing people, you're inspiring other people, hopefully listening, and you're also being inspired by the people you're having on. So that was we're like, wow, okay, that was very clear. We both had those answers. So I think those kinds of reflective answers or reflective times give us those answers. So I love the feeling part. And then leading us to the doing part. I think what comes up for a lot of women as they start exploring this, what lights me up, what gives me energy, they start to feel like a little guilty. And then they go back to like, I need a sacrifice. I just need to push through, and I'll get to that. I'll get to the things that really light me up later. But in order to achieve that goal, I got to do things that I may not want to do, or quite honestly, light me up. looking at, an analytical, analyzing a deal or running numbers or talking to the bookkeeper or the multiple things we do, right? In running a portfolio in a business. So how do women have those two things parallel as they're figuring out what lights them up so they don't feel so drained as they're achieving this goal or multiple goals? And quite honestly, get the things done, right? That need to get done to achieve those goals that they do want to accomplish. How do both of those things exist? How do they manage those two things together?
Yeah, it's a great question, Liz. This is what I talk about in my book, Born to Buzz, where I talk about living a passion first life. I think one of the problems is that we either have been told or believe that everything needs to be wonderful and passionate and we shouldn't do it if we're not feeling it, and then we roll our eyes and say, well, life's not like that, Laura. I got bills to pay. Like, I can't just go and do this, or I just can't, go to Thailand for 3 weeks because I feel like I need a vacation. I mean, sure, it's modern life. We have stuff that we've got to do. I think the challenge, though, is that as women in particular, we do not prioritize our passions. So that's when I talk about living a passion first life. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that I blow off this podcast interview because I want to go and bake cupcakes, because that's one of my passions. No, we doing this podcast is wonderful, Liz. I don't mean to make that what I want to do, but we have work to do, right? We have things that we need to do. But how are we in our days and our weeks prioritizing the things that we love? So, there's a couple of ways of doing that. During the week, you may be, doing your job and figuring out how to pay the bills and to pick up, your kid from daycare and to take the dog to the vet and do the laundry and everything else that we've got to do. But how can you give yourself 1 hour this week to prioritize something that you love and try not to worry about any sort of outcome, actually? Any sort of accomplishment, if that's not what you want. Is it an hour of doing some quote unquote silly art project upstairs with the door locked because you just love it? It's really figuring out how to create space in your life to do what you want to do that will the things that will light you up. Ugh, sorry, I'm getting tongue tied here. So there is that feeling of, just because we can't do all of it doesn't mean that we can't do any of it. And honestly, I make this same excuse. I think, and I'm not saying that women are not, working 3 times as hard as anyone else here, because I know that we do. But I do think that sometimes we use the obligation and responsibility stuff as almost like a comfort blanket. It's easier sometimes to say, well, I'm just going to do the laundry tonight, versus setting aside an hour and a half, doing something for ourselves, which, yes, we can feel guilt and shame for because that's what we've been taught. Leaving the laundry to Thursday because it can wait, doing what I want to do, but also sometimes taking off that hat of being the, dutiful business owner or the dutiful parent, whatever it is, and doing something that may be new. Yeah. You might suck at. You might not do a very good job at. Like, I bet you do laundry really well, Liz. I do laundry really well. Like, I
don't want to do laundry very well.
No, I hate it.
I hate it too.
But we're really good at it, right? We can get that stuff done. Yeah. So sometimes that's what's getting in our way as well. And often we just have to say, no, I'm putting my passion first right now. And it doesn't mean that you just do your passions every day and leave behind your obligations. You do not have to quit it all to be able to do more of the things you love in your life.
I love that. Something that I've been doing myself is playing piano. I just learned how to play, starting to learn how to play piano. And it's been something that I've really have always wanted to do. And I'm like, I'm going to do it this year and I'm going to commit. And I say this because often we don't have an accountability to someone else or something else. So then we cancel on ourselves. I don't know about everyone listening, or I don't know about you, Laura, but I am so quick to cancel on myself versus get something to someone else or make something happen or achieve a goal or take care of everyone and everything in my life besides a passion, right? I'm not training to do a recital, or I'm not looking to be the next artist as a piano player, but I'm just trying to fuel my passion. So what I thought is like, if I do this on my own, I'm going to totally cancel. I know myself. So if I say, oh, I'm going to play once a week and look on a YouTube and do a video, I'm like, no way I'm going to do it. But if I have somebody coming to my house and I schedule it out for like the next month, I won't cancel on them. Because if it's on my calendar and I'm paying them money, I'll be all in. So I did that. I found a local person. I looked on the Facebook group. Hey, does anybody know who teaches piano? And he's been coming for the last 3 months, every other week. And it's so lovely. And I feel the guilt and I do it anyway. And it's been so fun. And you know what it's done is that's real. What you're saying is really interesting because the feeling I get, because I didn't think about this until you said this to me, until you said it to me and everyone else listening, but it's the feeling of calm and therapeutic. Playing the piano has become like a therapy session for me. I'm just playing the piano. I'm not focused on anything else. It's very calming and very serene for me. And that's why I like it so much. I wasn't realizing why I liked it. And so I think that's so helpful is number one. If everyone listening could also, as they're looking into prioritizing their passions, find an accountability partner, find something that you just can't cancel on. Because for me, I knew if I just put it on my calendar and went on YouTube and tried to do it myself, there's no way I would have done it. So I found someone and I wouldn't cancel on this person. And I haven't.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely key. And if you have the means to do that, I think that's massive, is sort of finding the passion leaders, I guess, and the experts who are going to be able to take that. I do the same thing with my tennis. I schedule it out. I think another thing that you're very familiar with is community, right? Often what can happen is, and by the way, I think it's perfectly okay to never tell anyone about what your passion is and to do it completely on your own. Like, that's totally fine as well. However, if you do find that you need that accountability, which I totally do, community can be an incredibly valuable way to get that. And obviously you guys are doing that through your organization with Passion Collective. We have regular community gatherings. I'm doing one next week called the Passion Check-In. And sometimes I teach on these, but sometimes I just let the community come together and say, how are you prioritizing your passions? How is it going? What support and encouragement and help do you need to be able to do more of this? Because it is a journey. You used that word at the beginning. It is a journey, and we all go through chapters of life. And I write in my book about, look, if you'd asked me just after my dad died, so Laura, how are your passions going? I was not in a place to be able to even think about doing more of what lit me up or like pursuing my passions because I was grieving and I was heartbroken, right? So we do go through these chapters of life where sometimes pursuing our passions is not always going to be the first thing on our list. But if we can bring our community around us and say, look, I need help with this right now, or I need encouragement or support, it can help us continue to live that passion first life where the long game is prioritizing what we love. Because what we're talking about here, Liz, especially when you talk about doing things and accomplishment, is we forget that doing what we love actually helps us be successful.
Absolutely. Yeah,
just as you're saying, Liz, is, this is your piano playing is giving you this calm and this strength and this space. And I bet that is giving you confidence, strength, insert a whole load of other adjectives there to be able to put on this tremendous event that you guys are doing in June, right? It's creating some of that for you. It helps us when we do more of what we love. We go back to who we truly are in many ways, and it reinforces our confidence about our value and our worth. And it means that when we show up for the stuff that we still may love, but might be a bit harder, we've got that investment that we've put into ourselves. And we know that we have this thing. When we're constantly pouring out and we haven't got that special thing that we love inside of us, even the residue of what you did on Sunday afternoon playing your piano, it's Thursday afternoon. You're like, wow, I played piano on Sunday and that feels like a long time ago. You've probably still got some of that really positive residue from doing the thing that you loved. So we forget that pursuing our passions isn't just this silly thing that we get to do because we've been a good girl, which sometimes I think we tell ourselves. It's actually imperative. It's essential for us to show up as we truly are. But often these passions and these things, whether they're work passions or leisure passions, we minimize them because potentially they don't have immediate reward, or they're not visibly valuable to people in our network. Or we do worry about what people will say that, the activity that we're doing, because society can be very judgmental. But remembering that it can help our success, I think, I'm not saying that we should be constantly justifying ourselves, but we all have self-doubt with this. Well, maybe I shouldn't be spending an hour on this. Maybe I should just go and do the bookkeeping stuff because I'm really behind on it. Sure, make sure you pay your taxes. And also, is there a way that you can also do that thing you love?
I love that. And I think the key is to look at it both within the business or within the actual achieving of the goal. There's things that you like, and then there's things that are draining you. There's things that are giving you energy, and there's things that are draining you. So it's both on like a professional sense and a personal sense. But to your point, the more we have those moments of doing what we love, they give us that kind of extra bump, if you will, to continue on and to keep discovering. I think the bottom line is being aware for women. It's not about blindly and just sacrificing and putting your head down and pushing through, because so many of us can relate to that. I know I can.
Yeah.
It's in the moment of, okay, what's lighting me up? What do I really like? Even in your business, what am I really good at and enjoy? But what do I just, honestly, bottom line, what do I really like doing? It's very simple. And so I think it is that simple, but we need that awareness and we need the moments. So much of it, if you're not doing that, it could cause burnout, right? And it could cause just this point of, I don't even know who I am, right? That's like further down the road of like, I don't even know who I am. And I know you're going to be keynoting at InvestHER and we're going to be talking about the cost of burnout, not from a negative sense, but from a awakening sense. So women can really reboot, if you will, what's important to them, what they're standing for, and obviously achieving their goals along the way. So anything you want to share about, any teaser you want to share that you're going to be talking about at InvestHER?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to come. I've seen the conference out there and I know people who've come, and you do a brilliant job with it. So I'm really excited to come down and see everyone and share my stuff. For me, my part of my story is burnout, right? I mean, burnout is a complex topic. For me, it was physical as well as mental, but it was this disconnection, from the things that I truly loved. And it was reshaping my life and making my own path. The other big topic within burnout is self-care. And so what I'm going to be talking about when we come together is, how can we rethink self-care in a way that we can truly fuel ourselves? So this success that we're striving for, the impact that we want to make, is self-care really working for us right now? And is there a different way to think about it? And obviously, spoiler alert, I'm going to be talking about passions because, but I feel really passionate about this topic because I think that we potentially have got ourselves into this model of self-care that isn't helping us always. And I think that we need to take a moment to think about what we can do to truly fuel ourselves. So that's what we'll be talking about.
Oh, I'm so excited to meet you in person and have you there. And if you have not gotten your ticket, I don't know what you're waiting for. June 1st to 3rd, we'll be in Orlando, Florida, 3 days, 30 speakers, and it's all about hands-on workshops. So you could actually take action and build an action plan as you go versus being talked to and doing nothing with what you're learning. So come be with us for this transformational experience. We'll put the link in the show notes. Laura, this has been great. Really excited, like I said, meeting you and just, continually on this journey of connecting with who we are, who we're meant to be so that we can live life on our own terms, grow ourselves, grow our businesses, and grow our portfolios. That's what it's about. So where can everyone listening learn more about you and follow you on your journey?
Well, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I live and die by LinkedIn these days. So definitely connect with me there. And I'd love to sort of say hi and learn more about what you're doing there. And also I want to be able to support you as well. So LinkedIn's a really sort of good two-way version of that, but also pop along to passioncollective.co. We got everything on there. I've got a newsletter called The Passion Seeker that I send out every month. It doesn't sell anything really. It's more of a practical advice forum for you. For every month, you're going to get practical advice on how to pursue your passions. So you can find that on the website and a bunch of other resources and stories, those things that I was writing back in the early day. We've done 150 passion stories now. And Liz, I think you may have been the last one.
Yes.
So everybody should go and read Liz's passion story. That should be a good thing to do on the website.
Laura, thank you so much for being on and sharing your wisdom with us. And so excited to meet you in June. And everyone better get their tickets today. It's going to be such a phenomenal, transformational experience. So, Laura, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for including me. And yeah, I look forward to seeing everybody.